Hello and welcome. I'm happy you have decided to join me today and to spend some time talking a little bit about sustainability in our homes. And this presentation talks a little bit more about water resources specifically. We'll touch upon a few other things, but the main focus is water resources in our home. My name is Courtney, and I am a family and consumer sciences educator in Cuyahoga County. So before we get started, I want to give you a better idea of where we're going. And so by the end of this program, my hope is that you'll be able to recognize sustainability as a complex topic that exists on a spectrum. There's not usually a cut and dry, this is what it takes to have a sustainable living. It lives on a spectrum. Evaluate and compare water conservation or protection measures that you could take in your own home, and then to apply what you've learned, either by taking an action or by sharing something that you've learned with a friend. So before we get into actual recommendations or information, I wanted to touch upon sustainability and what I mean when I use the term sustainability. And so sustainability, and the working definition I use, is the avoidance of depletion of natural resources to maintain an ecological balance. But I think it's important to highlight that it lives in these three worlds. It's multifaceted. There's social sustainability, economic, and environmental. And when we're making a change, we need to, for example, if we are going to purchase something for our home that is going to help us have a smaller footprint, it also needs to be economically viable, right? We can't buy something we can't afford. And so it has to live on this spectrum, and it's different for each person. So you have to find what works for you. So whose responsibility is it? Earth Day is next week, and there's a lot of talk about what people can do on an individual level. And that is a huge part of having a sustainable or reducing your footprint. But it can't be any one of these things. Policy helps to provide infrastructure for action and behavior, but people have to make that change. It has to be socially acceptable for policy to be effective. And we can't make global, national, statewide, or even community level changes without some level of organization. So I just want to highlight that the recommendations that I'm sharing here may impact you or your immediate household community, but that alone won't be able to make a change on a larger scale. So we're going to talk about sustainability a little bit, specifically water resources, and I'm going to break these down by room. And I wanted to take a moment to talk about the language that I use. If something's broken or when it's time to replace, as mentioned before, sustainability is a complex topic. And so I can tell you about a tool or an item in your house that could be upgraded or changed so that it is more sustainable. But purchasing things also consumes and creates waste. So the idea here is, and I'll provide suggestions. If you're ready for a new toilet, here's something you can look for. If you're not ready for a new toilet, there's still things you can do. So let's start in the bathroom. Did you know that toilets are the main source of water consumption in our homes? About 30% or 1/3 of all of the water we use in our home is from flushing the toilet. You'll see here on this chart that there's some historical dates of about how many gallons per flush toilets use during these time periods. And you may see that after 1994, there was there was a big jump down in the amount of water used. And that is because the Environmental Act of 1992, signed by George H.W. Bush into law, went into effect in 1994. And that put federal standards in place for how much water certain fixtures in homes and in commercial, that how much water they were allowed to use. And so that's what you see here. In 1994, toilets were not allowed to use more than 1.6 gallons per flush. You'll also see this logo. It's a blue, look for WaterSense. It meets EPA criteria. That WaterSense program is for products that use 20% less water than the federal standard. So you can buy an EPA WaterSense toilet. It's 1.28 gallons per flush. Another term used for that toilet is a high efficiency toilet. The ultra high efficiency toilets use 0.8 gallons per flush, so not even a full gallon. And where you may have interacted with one of these is if you've ever been in a restroom and they have a dual flushing toilet. So there's a big flush for solid waste and a little flush for liquid waste. And for that solid waste flush, it's a 1.28 flush. And for that liquid waste, it's a 0.8 gallons per flush. If you are skeptical at the amount of waste that a ultra high efficiency toilet can handle, you always hear people like, oh, my toilet can flush 17 golf balls. So this is my fun fact for you for ultra high efficiency toilets. They can move 1.75 pounds of waste. So next time you encounter a toilet like that, if it's that kind of bathroom visit, go ahead and give it a try and see if you can, get things to move with that 0.8 gallons per flush. So all of that said, many of us are not ready to buy a new toilet. So there are some things that we can do to improve the toilets we have. The first being putting some food coloring into the tank of our toilet, that top part. Just squirt some in there so the watercolor is dyed. Put the tank lid back on, leave it for about a half hour, 45 minutes. When you come back, if there is any of that colored water in the bowl or the basin of the toilet, you may have a slow leak, depending on how much color has moved. But the water from the tank should not move into the bowl until you flush. So if you have a slow leak, you can either fix it yourself. It's usually a gasket repair, or you can call a repairman. The piece that usually needs to be replaced is about $10. So it's not a huge cost burden. Another thing that you can do is you can drop a brick into your toilet. There's a specific company that sells rubber bricks specifically made for toilets. They dislodge about a half gallon of water. So if you have that, the EPA standard 1.6 gallons per flush, and you drop a brick into your tank, you could bring that down to 1.1 gallons per flush. Something to note with this concept is people used to actually put housing building bricks into their toilet tanks, and they disintegrate over time. So we don't want to do that. You could use a plastic or a glass jug and fill it with water, or you could purchase something specifically for this. There is sort of a funny video for this ad campaign. So I will link, or Amy can link that in the chat if you want to watch it later, but it's cute. And it talks about, how much water can be saved by doing this. So moving on to another part of our bathroom, as you could imagine, we use a lot of water in our bathrooms. And so the EPA standard for shower heads is 2.5 gallons per minute. And then for faucets, 2.2 gallons per minute. And again, the WaterSense is 20% less than that federal standard. So when you switch to an EPA WaterSense faucet, we can you can not only save water, but you can also save money. Not only are you saving money on your water use, but think about the type of water we use in a bathroom. Usually it's warm, we're washing our hands, we're showering in warm or hot water. And so we're also saving some energy and some money on on how much water we have to heat for our use. So if you are not ready to upgrade to new fixtures, it's fine. I'm not ready even in my own, but you can, for water or for your shower, the average American takes a shower for 5 minutes. When I read that statistic, I was like, ooh, I am definitely on the higher end of that average. So now I challenge myself to take shorter showers. And the way I do that, usually I'll set 2 songs on my phone and I know I have to be done by the end of that second song. And then for faucets, and you can do this in your kitchen faucet or your bathroom faucet, down in the right-hand corner, there's a little green thing. And this is a water aerator. It's just an example of one. You can find these at your local home goods stores. This one brings a regular faucet. You undo your little screen and then you install this into your faucet, and it slows down the water and it brings it to a water sense level. So without even changing your fixture, for less than $5, you can make that change. So let's talk for a moment about laundry. Again, you can see these numbers of, on average, how many gallons per load washing machines have used over time. This is a little bit different. It does not have an EPA water sense standard, but there are high efficiency washing machines. You might see them, they're the HE standard. And so you will see that top loading washing machines still use a lot more water than the front loading washing machines. And something that I've heard when people, or that I've read, when people are talking about the differences between top loading and front loading, is that front loading washing machine can sometimes start to smell. And that's because water can get trapped between the door and the gasket. And if you've experienced something like that, the best way to get rid of that odor is actually making a water and bleach solution so that you can kill that mold that might be building up in there. EPA found that the US generates about 32.44 billion pounds of textile waste, and only about 15% of that is recycled, even though about 95% of all textiles can be recycled. When we're thinking about discarding unwanted clothes, this creates a lot of waste, but it also wastes a lot of water and energy, the things that went into making, transporting those clothing. So for example, a cotton shirt, cotton as a product, as an agricultural product, uses and relies on more pesticides than any other crop. And there's 1/3 of a pound of pesticides applied for each shirt. So when you look at your closet or in your wardrobe, and you're looking at the impact there, pesticides are just a truth in agriculture. But when we think about how we're consuming, it's something to be aware of. So some ways that we can improve our laundry practices. The first is to unsubscribe to those emails. When we are shopping for clothes, sometimes a way that you could change the amount you're consuming is to be intentional about what you're consuming. So identify the things that you need rather than just seeing, oh yeah, I do need a new pair of pants, or when those sales pop up, because things are always on sale. We always see them. So unsubscribing can help to bring it out of that daily out of your daily view. You can make repairs on your clothes. We have fabulous tools within Extension to help you if you are learning how to do that yourself. You can donate or borrow clothes. You can thrift along the same lines. When you're looking for new clothing, you can purchase some things by thrifting. You can also rent clothing, and this is something that women do have more options than men, but there are options out there for men to rent clothing. If you buy new, you can look for more sustainable brands or more sustainable practices in the clothing you're purchasing. You can always upcycle. If you have a t-shirt that you don't wear it, you're considering throwing it away. Maybe it's branded with like a work logo, so you don't want to throw it away. You can either upcycle it into a grocery tote, or you can downcycle it into a rag. You know, there's sometimes rules about what you do with logo shirts. And then finally, and this is one of the easiest things we can do, is to throw your lint away in the trash, and to make sure that it stays in the trash. So tie up that bag. This is because when we wash our clothes, fibers get loose, and a lot of times our clothing is made from blends of fabrics, so polyester, rayon, spandex, and those fabric blends are actually plastic, or have plastic sources. So when we throw away our lint, we're throwing away those microplastics and restricting them from the environment. Someone asked after I presented this last time if you can recycle lint, and the answer is yes, if you are only drying natural fibers, wool, cotton, silk, and nylon. If you are drying a combination of synthetic and natural, or if you're not really, good about cleaning it out between each and every drying cycle, then the answer is no. Lint is not compostable because those microplastics won't break down and then they become pollutants in our environment. Another note about laundry is during the summer, if you're able to hang dry some of your fabrics, especially your synthetic fabrics, that helps to extend their life, but it also helps to reduce the amount of microplastics that break off of them and restricts them from the environment. So much like the clothing washing machine, our dishwashing machines have changed over time with the amount of gallons of water they use for each load. So you can see here that they definitely have gotten more efficient over time. And again, there's not an EPA water sense standard for this, but there are high efficiency dishwashers, and those range around 4.5 gallons per load. There were conflicting resources on how much water hand washing uses. And I think a lot of that depends on how you hand wash dishes. At my hand washing growing up at my parents' house, we would, you scrub the dish, you rinse it, you put it in the drying rack, you scrub the dish, you rinse it, you get the idea. But when I started going by my partner's family, they would always fill a basin of water to have like a basin filled up with sudsy water. So all they would have to do is rinse and put it in there. So they're not running as much water to resuds. So I think it depends a lot on how you are washing dishes. This is another note where the type of water we use in a dishwasher, it's often hot water. So when we're saving the amount of water we're using, we're also saving the amount of energy we're using to heat that water. So if you were going to replace your washing machine, dishwashing machine with a more water efficient method, it can save you between $300 and $700 a year, both on water and that heating. So let's move into the kitchen. I don't know if you all are milk drinkers, but milk is one of the most wasted foods in America. About 12% of all of the food that we waste by weight is milk. And this is especially costly, milk is especially costly to the environment to consume, but also when we waste it, because it takes milk to produce it, it takes energy to produce it, to ship it, to process it, to store it, to ship it again at the, from, the milk planting facility to the grocery store, and then to get it to your house and keeping the energy to store it there. And one of the ideas behind why milk is one of the most wasted foods is because of this topic here. And it is that milks have date labels, and date labels can be confusing. According to the USDA, there are these 4 date labels: best if used by, best if used before, sell by, and use by. And in general, these date labels are used as a quality indicator. They are not used as a safety indicator. There are a few exceptions. Infant formula is one, because that is the total nutritional source for an infant. So if the quality is decreasing, that could become dangerous for baby. But also things that are not heated prior to consumption. So deli meats, soft cheeses, hot dogs, things like that. They have a history of that microbial contamination. We should also be aware of those date labels. But for things like milk, pasteurized milk is safe to consume past the sell-by date, unless it's been cross-contaminated. And while it might not taste as good or as fresh, it can go sour and have flavors that people don't like. It can make you feel nauseous, right, because of the smell or the texture, but it's not going to make you sick. And so there was sorry, I got mixed around. And so the average American spends about $1,300 on food each year that ends up being wasted. And so that is about $3.50 a day. So when you think about all those tips, it's like, oh, cut out your daily coffee. If we stop wasting food, you could have your daily coffee, or, build a pretty good emergency fund. So that's more money than Americans spend on gasoline, which is about $1,200, clothing, which is about the same, household heating and electricity, and on their property taxes. So it is a significant, it is not a small number. The number one cause or the things that cost the most that we end up wasting is meat and seafood. And this waste goes beyond just the food. Again, it has lasting impacts where, the water that went into growing the food or feeding the animal who then became our food. So the waste really does have some broader impacts. And so some ideas around what you can do to help reduce your food waste is to use your freezer. OSU has so many great resources and fact sheets on how to freeze food and how to freeze food for best quality. And so use those. But if you're thinking, oh, this might not going to get to this, prep it and just freeze it. Even if you're not freezing it in the best way, like for example, I throw my bell peppers in the freezer without prepping them first, is okay. It might not hold up as well, but at least I'll be able to use it in the future. Have a use first corner of your fridge. I know I clean out my fridge the night of garbage night. And so I put things that I can keep, but I need to use right away in a specific little spot in my fridge. You can organize your kitchen and first in, first out. So this especially gets harder on grocery shopping for me and my family. Is we're really excited about the thing we just got at the grocery store. We're like, oh, but I want to eat this new food item. But we have to finish what we have first. And then compost what you can't save, buy from bulk bins, and know that that's a way that you could potentially reduce plastic, but it's also a way that you're only buying what you need for that recipe or what you intend to consume. Label your leftovers so you don't forget what they are, and people in my household are more likely to eat things if I don't, especially when I'm not around, if they know what's in the container. And then preparing food so it's ready to eat. And what this means for me is fruits and vegetables, especially, we will eat them if they're ready to go in the fridge. If they are sitting in their whole form on the counter, on a cart, sometimes we're not as great about eating them in a timely fashion. And so it takes me a little bit more time after a grocery shop to cut some of those things up, but it does help us in the long run to consume the foods that we're purchasing. And so I have a long list of resources that I've used, and these are all clickable links so that you can reference them. And then my question is, what's next for you? Earth Day is next Thursday. And, you know, what will you do after this presentation? Will you take some of this information to a friend? Or is there something that you're like, oh yeah, I could maybe do that in my home? So thank you for spending some time with me this Friday morning. And yeah, I'll answer any questions if there are any.